Sending transactional emails in C# is a fairly common practice, but it doesn't have to be a difficult one. Instead of struggling to get the code right, especially the built-in emailing system being deprecated in .NET 5, you can use Fluent Email to quickly and securely send emails in C#. In this video, we're going to see how to send emails, how to use email templates, and how to easily test our email delivery system without using a production email server. Now, if this is the first video you've watched of mine, my name is Tim Corey, and it's my goal to make learning C# easier. I provide videos twice a week here on YouTube to help you grow as a developer. I also have a full set of training courses on IAmTimCorey.com. I encourage you to check out all the resources that I have to offer. Now, in this video, as with most of my videos, I'm going to create some source code. If you'd like a copy of my source code, use the link in the description to get it. All right, let's start in Visual Studio by creating a new project. And we're going to choose a console application. Now, I'm choosing a console application because of the fact that it's really simple. It's the cleanest user interface I can get. There's not a lot of stuff to set up. There's no forms to create, buttons to drag and drop, and all the rest to get things going. It allows you to see just the code that we're focusing in on, which is sending email. Now, you can use this same code in pretty much any project type inside of C# except for Blazor WebAssembly. So you can go crazy with this. You can do it in a web application, a desktop application, a service, and so on. So there's a lot of options here with this code. It works across all of them. But just know we're going to use a console application because of the simplicity. So let's create our email demo and email demo app, project name and solution name, and hit create. And the first thing we're going to do here is right click on our project, go to properties, and change this to target.NET 5. I want to target the latest .NET version. If you're not familiar, .NET Framework is the original .NET from back in 2001, 2002 timeframe when .NET was first released. That's what .NET Framework was. And that worked well for us up until a few years ago when Microsoft said it's getting too bloated. So they said, you know what, we're going to stop working on .NET Framework and kind of redo it, reinvent it, and build .NET Core. And so that's where .NET Core 1 came from, was basically a taking all the stuff that .NET Framework does, all the modern stuff, and reworking it so that it works cross-platform and so that we kind of eliminate all the workarounds and bug fixes that we had in .NET Framework. We've moved up to .NET Core 3.1, and now the latest version is .NET 5. That's just a minor update from .NET Core 3.1, really. There's some changes to it. We got C# 9, which is why I wanted to upgrade to .NET 5. But just note that .NET Core 5 is just an upgrade from .NET Core 3.1. It's not the major shift that was from .NET Framework to .NET Core. It's a minor shift. So just note that difference. All right, so we're gonna get rid of our console write line. Now let's first go to our NuGet packages. So right click and say manage NuGet packages. And we're gonna look for Fluent Email. We have a few different options here. All these orangish icons here, these are the latest versions. And we've got the core, which is the very basic stuff. SMTP for using a SMTP server, Razor, Mailgun, SendGrid, and MailKit. So, and there may be more coming in the future as well. But let's talk through our options here. We're going to choose SMTP because in general, this is the most, probably the most common way of doing things. If you have your own mail server, or if you are using something like Gmail to be your email server, then you would use SMTP. It's only if you use a service like Mailgun or SendGrid that you use one of those. We're going to choose SMTP because it's easy to use. It's, like I said, the most common, and it's also going to be what we're going to use in our testing as well. If you choose one of these other types, like SMTP or Mailgun or SendGrid, then you get Core by default. And if you scroll down here under the dependencies, you'll see it depends on .NET Standard version 2.0, and then it brings in fluentemail.core at version 2.9 or above. So let's install this. We accept that. And that's pretty much all the work we have to do with our NuGet packages. We'll come back and grab this Razor one later. But for now, that's all we need to get started. Now we are going to do asynchronous work inside of our static void main. So I want to say async task and control dot to add that using statement. So if you're not familiar, we talked about this a couple of videos ago when we talked about our Excel files, but you can convert a static void main over to the static async task in order to make calls to asynchronous methods. And that's just fine. It doesn't break anything or cause any problems. In fact, that's the way you do it if you will make asynchronous calls. So the first thing we need to do is establish our email server. Where are we going to send these emails through? Now, and this is a point of confusion sometimes when we're talking about sending emails using C#. This is not the email server. This is an email client. Think of our C# application like Outlook. This is going to be our Outlook, where we're going to create the email and push send. But Outlook doesn't actually do the sending. It's the server that's connected to that does the sending. It's the Exchange server. Or if you have Gmail and you're in the browser, the C# application is like the browser, where you build the email and you push send, but the browser is not what actually sends the email. It's the Gmail servers behind the scenes that are doing the actual sending. So we have to connect our client, our C# application, to a server somewhere. Now, if you want to send out via Gmail, then Gmail will provide you the SMTP port number and URL to send, and you'll have to provide credentials as well to say who you are. When you do that, you're going to be sending as you. So if you say, my email address is, maybe tim@gmail.com. It's not, but let's say it is. And I put that in, I put a password in. Well, now all emails coming from this C# application are going to come from tim@gmail.com because that's who's logged in. So just note that's who's sending the emails. Even if you specify a different from address, they're actually coming from whoever is authenticated to the server. So just note that. I'm going to be very clear on this. This is the client, not the server. So let's start with var sender equals new SMTP sender. That's going to add the using statement for fluentemail.smtp. And we're going to say new sender, open paren twice, and then we'll do a lambda and say new SMTP client. That's going to add the whole system.net.mail. Get rid of that and do our control dot to add the using statement for that. And in here, we'll say, we're just going to do localhost. All right, that's our host. Now, this is a local host because we're sending it to our own machine. We're going to use our own machine for testing. But you could put in here the web address for for Gmail, for the Gmail SMTP server, or your Exchange server URL. Whatever server you want to send to, that's what you're going to put there. And then you can say in here, you can add other things. For example, enable SSL equals false. And whoops, I got an extra. I'm going to move this down to here. There we go. Enable SSL is false. So by default, you want SSL on. But for testing purposes, we'll turn it off because we don't need the security or to worry about the certificate for our testing purposes. But this is not production. This is for demo purposes. And by the way, these settings will come from your app settings.json typically. They would not come via hard-coded C# code. So delivery method. And for delivery method, we're going to say first smtp delivery method dot, we're going to say specify pickup directory. All right. And what that's going to do is going to put the files in a directory. Just put the emails in a directory. This is one way of testing. I'm going to show you an easier way that's more comprehensive, but this way is great for really quick and easy testing. And then pickup directory location will be C:/demos. Okay. What this will do is it will specify that we're going to, whenever you send an email, you're going to send it to a directory as a file. And this is the directory you put it in. This obviously is a testing setup, but it can be used for production as well, because certain email systems could monitor directories and pull emails out of them, .eml files, and process them. So just note this could be used for production, but in general, it probably won't be. All right, so now we're going to say email.default sender, email, control dot to add the using fluent email.core, email.default sender, not re-render or render, default sender equals sender. So it's going to set up our default for our server. So now whenever we send an email out, it's going to send out using these sender settings. Now let's actually send an email. Var email equals await email. This is the fluent stuff comes in. We can say, usually you do it on a separate line. It makes it really easy to read instead of trying to chain them all in one line. You can go a separate line for each entry, and it makes it really easy. So from, and I'm going to say tim@timco.com. Now, do I actually own tim@timco.com? No, I don't. I am saying that's who I am. Now, this is where you have to remember this is a client, not the server. So the client can say, I'm sending from tim@timco.com. And the server is going to say, yeah, okay, but you're actually sending from tim@gmail.com. And so I'm going to tell everybody that looks at this that this is what you're saying your email address is, but we're going to say on behalf of tim@gmail.com. And that's where it's trying to spoof who you are. So it's going to be very clear about that. And this could raise some flags in your spam filter if you try and pretend you're somebody you're not, and the email system thinks that you're trying to create spam and confusion about who you are. So just note that typically you would actually send it from whoever controls this email server. So you'd send it from tim@gmail.com. But in our case, we can specify. So from tim@timco.com, and then who we gonna send it to? Well, since this is a demo, we're gonna say test@test.com, and we can give this person a name. Let's say Sue. So what this is going to do is, and don't write the red squiggles yet because the await is what's causing that. But the to, we specify the email address to send to. That's pretty clear, right? But if you've ever looked at email clients, you often see it say, hey, this email came to Tim Corey. It won't say this email came to tim@IAmTimCorey.com. It's just a nicety. They give you a title or a name. That's what we're doing here. So we could put, Dr. Sue Smith, and that's what it'd appear like in her inbox, even though we sent it to her email address, test@test.com. It's just a really a nicety. To subject, and let's just say thanks. We're gonna make this a transactional email when a person purchases something, okay? And then .body, notice how easy this is? Just kind of chain these together. So body, let's do a really simple one. thanks for buying our product. We'll make that better, but for now that works. And then dot send async. All right, that's it. We're done. Okay, we've now learned how to send email inside of C#. Pretty simple stuff. You create your sender, you make that your default sender, and then you create your email. Now, why are we capturing this variable here? This var email equals, because this does the actual send right here. Well, the reason why is because this email now has the response to see if we successfully sent the email or if there's an error. If there's an error, we can look here, email dot, you can see error messages. We can read through the error messages, the message ID, whether or not it was successful, and so on. We'll leave that alone for this demo, but just note that that's there, and that's why we capture that. So you would probably record this in a database somewhere saying, hey, we sent the email out and it sent successfully. Or we sent an email out and we had these errors. We're going to try it again in 12 hours or something like that. So a lot of stuff you can do there with the email status. But this is the basics of sending an email. Let's open up our demos folder, which is empty right now. Let's run this application. And once it runs, there you go, it's done. We'll open up the folder again, and now we have this file. And notice it looks like an Outlook file because of the fact that by default, .eml files open up in Outlook. I can right-click on that and say Edit with Notepad, and there we go. Sender, tim@timco.com. Receiver was Sue, and there's her email address. MIME type from, to, date, subject, content type is text, and content transfer. So it's got all the information we need for our email, but that's not a great testing thing because what if you have 100 of those? It doesn't really read that well. And that's where I use another tool. So this was, the Fluent Email is one of the 10 tools I mentioned at the beginning of the year, saying, hey, these are 10 tools you should check out for 2021. You might want to check that video out for the other tools that were there. But one of the other tools was a tool for viewing email called papercut SMTP. So let's change over to use this. It's an email client that also acts as a server. And so if you look at the options here, you can see any IP address, port 25 is what's going to listen for email on. So we can come back over here. Instead of sending via this directory, we're going to send via an actual email server. So delivery method equals SMTP delivery method dot network. And the port is going to be 25. It'll still send via localhost. Okay, so that should be all we need. If we run this again, then it will pop up an email in here. Notice it says thanks. So this is the message from tim@timco.com. Let's zoom in here. From tim@timco.com to Sue, date, message, thanks for buying our product. There's the raw email content. This is what the EML file looks like. But then this is the actual message. There's the headers, the body, the different sections. So it looks like a real email. And in fact, if you you can delete it if you want. You can forward it. We're going to delete it. This is really helpful if you're sending out dozens or hundreds of test emails where you can search through that list and find, pick out certain examples and do random samplings for testing. Now, probably the one area you're looking at right now and saying, well, this is just, it's not great. And that is this right here, the body. Who thinks that's a complete email? And it might be for some transaction where you say, hey, we got your message, something like that, where it's a really short text-based thing. But in general, you want a more comprehensive body, something a little more meat to it, maybe even with some things injected into it, like their name and so on. Well, we can do that. And that's where we right click on dependencies and go to NuGet packages. I talked about this other package for Fluent Email called Razor. This allows us to create Razor templates for our email. So let's install this as well. And there's one more thing that we need to do, and that is if we right click on our project and go to properties, whoops, nope. Right click on our project and say edit project file. There we go. Inside of here under target framework, there's one tweak we have to make, which is preserve compilation context is true. And that's the one tweak we need in order to actually use these templates that's not listed that I found in the documentation. So it wasn't sending out the templates properly until I added this extra line. So just note that I need to add that line. At some point, probably that line won't be necessary, but for now it is. Okay, so we don't want to send using this body, right? We want to send using some kind of template. So let's create a template. The way I'm going to do this is using String Builder. Now you could do this in a number of different ways. You can even create a full page and just have it copied in. But I'm going to do it in text. So String Builder, control dot to add that using statement, and call this template equals new. And then we will say template dot append. Let's say append line. It doesn't really matter because of the fact it ignores the line breaks in our emails, but I like to have it in there to be more visual, even if we printed this out in just a string. So we're gonna say dear model dot first name, okay, and we'll put a comma there. So this is where our templates start to come in. This is all Razor syntax. So you can do pretty much anything you can do in Razor syntax, you can do inside of this code, including doing things like for each loops or while loops or other things you want to do over your data. And you can say template dot append line, and we'll say, let's create a new paragraph. So HTML, so paragraph. Thanks for purchasing, and we'll say model.product name, period. We hope you enjoy it. And we'll end our paragraph there. Sorry, I'm scrolling off the page here. End our paragraph there. And then let's append one more line. Not toString. Append line, and we'll say the Timco team. Really simple little template there, just enough to give us 3 lines of text on the page, but this gives us something to work with for a template. So we have our model.firstname and our model.product name. Where are we gonna get those from? Well, we'll actually create our model directly in here. We could pull it from any kind of C# model we wanted to, but we'll just create an anonymous one. So down here, we're going to say using template. So using template, we're going to say templates, which is a string builder, so we have to say toString. And then we're going to say our new anonymous object. We'll say first name equals Tim, and our product name equals, how about bacon wrapped bacon. All right, that's the product we bought. Oops, no semicolon at the end of that because it's a Fluent. So we have to have the .async at the end. So that's using a template. Now let's talk this through, just make sure that you're kind of comprehending what I did. First of all, String Builder. Why String Builder and not just a string? Well, String Builder is much, can I keep saying much, more efficient than string appending, or even string interpolation, or adding the strings together, concatenation, all those things. They're all a lot slower than String Builder. So String Builder is a much more efficient way of doing things. So if you're going to do lots of strings, or if you're going to put this in a loop, you definitely want to have this be a String Builder. So that's the reason why I use String Builder. And String Builder is a tool that allows us to append lines of text. And at the end of it, we just output it by saying toString, and it appends all those lines together and outputs it. So it creates a string once instead of creating multiple strings and redoing memory and all that kind of stuff that's really expensive with strings. So that's why I use that. Now, using template, we're passing in the template itself. That's this right here. And then we're passing in the model that has the objects we need out of it. This can be an anonymous object like we did, or it could be a person model if we had a person model already created, or an order model or something like that. So it doesn't have to be anonymous. And it can have more objects in it than we're using. This is the exact same thing as if you had a Razor Pages page and you passed in a model to it. It's the same thing. So in fact, you could create a Razor Pages page that designed your email and then just import that page. You could do something like that. So just note that's how that works. So that's all there is using a template, except for one more thing, which is here we have to say email.default renderer equals new Razor renderer. All right, we have to tell it that Razor renderer is going to render our email instead of the default, which would be just text. So instead of treating this as just text, it's going to treat it as a Razor syntax. Okay, so now let's go back to our papercut. There's nothing in here. Let's run this and we'll watch this pop in. Wait for it. So don't get an error here. Oh, there we go. Took a minute to get started. But now we have an email and it looks a little better. We've got our 3 lines here. Dear Tim, thanks for purchasing bacon wrapped bacon. So Tim is one of the objects and bacon wrapped bacon was the other. And that's a little more, formatted. Our body looks a little better. You can see that our body actually has a paragraph tag. It's just 3 separate lines. But when it renders in a nicely formatted manner. So that's how you test it with a template. All right, we can delete that. All right, so there we go. We now have our email sender. We can send to either just EML files, or we can send it to a network server, which in this case is localhost that we're testing locally using our papercut SMTP, which by the way, I'll try to link this down in the description so you can get this for yourself. It's free to use. And actually there's the URL, really, really tiny. Good luck trying to read that. I will link it down in the description. But using that tool, it's really easy for testing emails. Again, this should all come from this. That should all come from your app settings.json. And so you can change it from your testing to your production. If you are playing from app settings.json, I would leave your default to be localhost and port 25. And then only in your CI/CD process, when you are moving to production, would you change that to be your actual production servers. So with that, we have our template as well, which again, you could put that into its own page and just pull that page content, or you could put that in a database, however you want to do that. But you can create your template, and then that's all there is to sending email. You want to send to more people, no problem. You can add more to the to line. You can add more CC or BCC lines as well. You can put more in the subject line if you want. Basically, it's really flexible and really easy to use and really easy to send email using C#. So that's it for Fluent Email. Pretty quick and simple to do, and yet really, really powerful, and can be really, really beneficial for automating an awful lot of things when it comes to interacting with customers. So what questions do you have? What things do you want to see more of, or what areas do you want to see that might need to be improved or tweaked, or things you think are missing from Fluent Email. I can tell you Fluent Email doesn't do everything, but it does an awful lot of stuff. And for probably 95% of your use cases, Fluent Email is all you're going to need. So check it out. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I appreciate it. Thanks for watching. And as always, I am Tim Corey.